All right, let's jump straight in. Really fascinating material you shared with us for this deep dive. We're tackling something so many organizations are grappling with, right? Getting real value out of their enterprise data and analytics. Yeah, your sources laid out a really clear picture. I mean, on one hand, data is the absolute fuel. It's what you need for digital transformation. But then on the other hand, loads of companies just hit these frustrating walls trying to actually use it effectively. The material points to these persistent, kind of hidden issues that are quietly throwing data strategies way off track.
And, understanding these isn't just about the tech side. It's strategic. As the sources make really clear, these roadblocks, they slow down innovation, they mean missed opportunities, and maybe most critical today, they introduce significant compliance risk. So our mission in this deep dive is basically to cut through all that complexity in the material you provided and get straight to the essential insights you really need to know.
Exactly. And what's great is that your sources don't just talk about the general problem, they really hone in on 5 specific recurring roadblocks. So we're going to take them one by one. Okay, let's unpack this first one. The first major issue highlighted, it's what they call outcome misalignment. This is that classic trap, isn't it? Starting with the technology, the tools, the shiny new dashboards, instead of starting with the actual business goal or the outcome you're trying to achieve. That whole tool-first thinking, awaham tamenis.
Yeah, the material points out how organizations pour money into these tools, build really complex systems without first defining what success actually looks like, in terms of real business results. And the consequence, it isn't just wasted spending, though. Well, that's definitely part of it. Crucially, they miss critical compliance targets. The sources explicitly mention things like SOC2, GDPR, HIPAA, these big regulatory standards for data privacy, security, or even internal audit requirements. If you don't define meeting these standards as a core outcome right up front, your data work just won't be designed to support them, and that leaves you exposed, big time.
Well, what's insightful here is the fix suggested. It's simple, but really powerful. You have to deliberately lead with the why. Define that specific business KPI you want to move, or that critical compliance benchmark you absolutely must hit. Before you even look at the technology, the tech is just the how, right? Starting with the required outcome, especially those non-negotiable regulatory requirements. It ensures that everything you build after that is aimed directly at delivering real value and meeting those essential mandates from day one. It's like planning your journey before you pick your car.
That makes perfect sense, yeah. Knowing your destination changes everything about how you prep. All right, so if you haven't defined that outcome properly, you often end up with this disconnected collection of tools, which leads right into the second roadblock the sources identify, integration overload. Okay, the material you shared really highlights the sheer complexity that comes from having too many disconnected systems, in your data ecosystem. It points out that data teams often spend like the majority of their time just trying to wire these different systems together, rather than actually getting insights from the data itself. So what gets broken here, according to the sources, is that data teams are just stuck, constantly plumbing fragmented systems. And this isn't just inefficient, it creates really significant risks. You get blind spots where data doesn't connect, gaps in data lineage, which is, basically being unable to track where your data came from or how it changed. Inconsistent policies applied to data in different silos, missed audit trails. It all leads to a big jump in compliance risk because you lose that end-to-end visibility. Makes data governance an absolute nightmare.
Right. And this challenge of fragmentation raises a really critical question. How do you manage it without getting buried in all that complexity? The smart shift, suggested in the sources, is to prioritize platforms built with native integration and automation capabilities. And the reason why this is so vital for compliance and visibility, well, native integration means the systems are actually designed to work together smoothly from the start. It's not like trying to force communication between systems that were never built for it. This reduces friction. It gives you much clearer visibility into data flows and ensures that compliance and governance policies can be applied consistently across your whole data landscape instead of, having to patch things together manually all the time.
Okay, right. That makes sense. Moving on to roadblock number 3 then. Bottlenecked knowledge. The sources describe this with a phrase that really sticks. Too few know too much. This is when that critical understanding, about your data systems, your processes, it's concentrated in the hands of just a handful of experts. And that puts the whole organization at risk. The material highlights that crucial understanding. Maybe it's knowing the details of a data system or how specific data transformations work, or even navigating complex compliance processes that are built into the data flow. It's all locked away. In just a few people's heads, this immediately causes project delays because everyone has to wait for the experts. Makes applying compliance policies broadly incredibly slow. and essentially make scaling your data initiatives nearly impossible. As your source material puts it, these experts become single points of failure.
Exactly. And the counter to that bottleneck, as the sources propose, is to democratize data intelligence.
Yeah.
This involves using tools like integrated semantic intelligence, which basically makes data understandable using business terms, not just technical jargon, and enabling self-service capabilities. The goal is for business users and analysts to be able to find, understand, and use the data they need, sort of, independently, without needing to constantly rely on those few experts for every single query or task. The key, which the source emphasizes, is doing this without compromising compliance. That's crucial. You're making knowledge and access broader, but you maintain control and consistency through the platform itself. It reduces dependencies and makes a whole organization far more resilient.
That's a powerful idea, making knowledge accessible without losing those necessary controls. All right, roadblock number 4. This relates directly to those disconnected systems we were just talking about, fragmentation fatigue. No, this isn't just about having too many tools. It's about how data literally gets broken up because of those siloed tools and the disjointed processes that follow. The sources use another really striking phrase here. Data doesn't flow. It fragments. So what gets broken, according to the material, is that organizations operate with isolated tools, separate teams handling different steps of the data journey. Everything from getting data into the system ingestion to cleaning it, to analyzing it, to reporting on it. All separate. The consequences are significant and costly. You get duplicate data popping up everywhere, unclear lineage, so you can't really trust the source. Inconsistent governance rules applied haphazardly, and crucially, increased exposure to regulatory penalties because you lack that consistent quality and policy control across the entire data lifecycle.
Right. So the strategy suggested to combat this is to unify the flow. This means building an end-to-end approach that intentionally connects every single step of that data journey. The sources point towards using an integrated, automated, unified platform to sort of bridge the gaps between teams, tools, and objectives. And this unified flow is absolutely critical. The why it's crucial for compliance and avoiding those penalties is because it allows you to enforce consistent quality checks, apply governance policies uniformly, and maintain clear audit trails from the moment data enters the system right through to when it's used for reporting. It ensures data is accurate, trustworthy, and, importantly, auditable.
That consistency, yeah, that seems absolutely non-negotiable in today's regulatory environment, doesn't it? Finally, the 5th and last roadblock highlighted in your sources, slow and expensive. The material points out that while traditional approaches and legacy systems just can't keep pace today, they're too cumbersome. What's broken here is that inefficient, often manual processes just take far too long and cost way too much. They don't respond quickly to real-time risks or rapidly changing regulatory requirements. The sources make a really stark point. In today's compliance landscape, delays aren't just missed opportunities anymore. They can cost millions both in direct penalties for non-compliance and in lost business because you just can't act on data fast enough.
And the fix presented is essentially to go agile. This means embracing modern, scalable platforms. According to the material, these platforms are built specifically to enable things like self-service, putting the power of rapid data preparation and analytics directly into the hands of the business users who actually need it. They facilitate quick deployment of governance policies and allow for real-time data processing. This inherent agility is what positions you to stay ahead, not just of potential threats and regulations, but also ahead of the competition, simply by being able to adapt and respond with speed.
So, wrapping up this deep dive then,
Right.
what does this all mean? Your sources offer a pretty clear bottom line.
Yeah, the bottom line, as they presented, is that these 5 roadblocks, they aren't just minor technical hiccups. They're fundamentally strategic failures. A data strategy that's truly equipped for the modern world, they argue, it must be agile enough to handle change. It has to be outcome-driven, so it actually delivers measurable value. And it needs to be built from the ground up for trust, compliance, and speed. All 3.
And they leave us with a really compelling thought, don't they? If your current data ecosystem feels like it's constantly fighting against you, causing friction and delays at every turn, maybe it's time to really think about reimagining the very foundation it's built on.
That is powerful. And thinking about everything we've just discussed from your sources, here's maybe a final thought for you to consider. Looking at your own context, your own organization, which of these 5 roadblocks, outcome, misalignment, integration overload, bottleneck knowledge, fragmentation fatigue, or just being slow and expensive, which one feels like the most significant challenge for you right now? What specific, perhaps even subtle signs could you look for in your daily work that might indicate your data ecosystem isn't just facing technical issues, but is actually strategically struggling in one of these key areas? Something to ponder.
That's a great point to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your sources and joining us for this deep dive. We really enjoyed exploring these really crucial insights with you.